Call the meeting to order. Let's take a roll call. We have a quorum. So let's move to announcements, staff.
All right, thank you. Good evening, everybody. I do have a few things real quickly. First is I'd like to introduce Lee Kennedy. Lee is our new Planning Commission member. He was just confirmed at Monday night's County Commission meeting, so we're really happy to have Lee on board. Lee's been a member of the community for many years, 20 or so years, and he owns Leapers Fork distillery, and so that's a point of view that we've not had as a business owner in the rural area. So we're glad to have Lee on board. Item 24 has been withdrawn. And then the last thing is that under other business, I'd like to give you all an update on the regional growth planning that we've been doing with the municipalities. So I've got a fairly brief PowerPoint that I'll give under other business, and that's been added to the agenda. You've got a revised agenda in front of you. That's all I have.
Thank you, sir. We will move to consideration of the minutes from the last meeting. Are there any comments on that? We have a motion. Do we have a second? We have a second. Let's vote, please. Motion passes. Thank you. Moving on to the consent agenda, Commissioner Hatcher.
Yes, I am recusing myself of the consent agenda.
Thank you. Are there any items on the consent agenda that need to be pulled off for discussion? Hearing none, we'll take them as a whole. Do I have a motion? We have a motion and a second on the consent agenda. Let's vote, please. Thank you. Motion passes. Item 24 was withdrawn under old business. So moving on to item number 25 under concept plans. Concept plan review for Vista Creek subdivision containing 16 lots on 149.25 acres located off Old Hillsborough Road in the 9th voting district. Staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant is requesting concept plan approval for a 16-lot traditional subdivision in the Rural Preservation 5 zoning district. Concept plan approval is the first stage in the development process. Previously, the applicant had submitted 3 large lot easement subdivisions for this property and each received preliminary plat approval. If approved, this proposed 16-lot traditional subdivision will supersede the 3 previously approved preliminary plats. Subject property totals approximately 149 acres and is located off Old Hillsborough Road, approximately 2/5 of a mile west of its intersection with New Highway 96 West. Surrounding properties range in size from 1 acre to more than 100 acres and are used for residential or agricultural purposes. The site contains a number of natural resources, including moderate and very steep slopes, a stream, colluvial soils, and large areas of woodlands. Approximately 81% of the site is covered in tree canopy. Within the proposed development, lots range in size from 5 acres to 8.74 acres in size. The overall density is 0.04 dwelling units per acre. Approximately 23% of the site will be preserved in open space. Approximately 72% of the existing tree canopy will be retained. Access to the proposed development will be provided from a single entrance on Old Hillsborough Road, which is classified as a collector roadway by the major thoroughfare plan. Right and left turn lanes are not required. Internal roadways will be privately maintained. Water service is provided by HB&TS Utility District, and wastewater is handled via individual on-site septic systems. Williamson County Department of Sewage Disposal Management has reviewed and approved the request. It should be noted that once detailed construction and engineering plans are prepared in conjunction with the submittal of a preliminary plat, changes to the layout, including the potential for reduction of lots may be necessary. A landscaping plan will also be required. Staff recommends approval of this concept plan with the following conditions. Preliminary plat must address the following. Number one, submission of roads, drainage, and erosion control plans for review and approval by the county engineer. And number two, submission of water plans for review and approval by HB&TS Utility District. The final plat must address the following. Number one, prior to consideration of final plat approval, the applicant shall submit HOA documents for review and approval by the county attorney's office. The HOA documents shall address the requirements of Section 17.12 private streets of the zoning ordinance. The HOA documents must be submitted with the final plat, and the approved HOA documents must be recorded concurrently with the recording of the final plat. Number two, establishment of performance bond for roads, drainage, and erosion control. Number three, establishment of a performance bond for water improvements in favor of HB&TS Utility District. Number four, submission of landscaping plans and establishment of a performance bond for landscaping improvements. Number five, dedication of right-of-way 30 feet off the center line of Old Hillsborough Road. Number six, execution of performance agreements for the above referenced sureties. Number seven, execution of stormwater maintenance agreement and submission of an operation and maintenance plan for stormwater improvements. And number eight, submission of the approved final plat in DWG format on recordable media based on the Tennessee State Plan Coordinate System prior to signature and recording of the plat.
Thank you, Aaron. Do we have any questions for staff? Commissioner Rose?
That there's a private property that's enclosed by that, by this new proposal. Is that to remain occupied?
Kelsey from T-Square, if you'll come up for us, please. And Commissioner, I believe that's correct, but Kelsey can answer that for us.
Kelsey McGee at T-Square Engineering. Yes, that house is to remain as its own 5-acre parcel, and it's pretty well buffered on the property with an existing pond, and the building envelopes are set off from that property's existing house as well.
Further questions? We have a motion? We have a motion and a second. Let's vote, please. Item passes. Moving on to item 26, concept plan for Hardeman Estates subdivision containing 10 lots on 65 acres located off Hardeman Springs Boulevard in the 5th voting district. Staff?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant is requesting concept approval for a 10-lot traditional subdivision in the Triune Character Area 1 zoning district. Concept plan approval is the first stage in the development process. The subject property is approximately 65 acres in size, and its sole access is through Hardeman Springs development at the end of Hardeman Springs Boulevard. Surrounding properties range in size from several acres to more than 100 acres and are used for residential or agricultural purposes. The Kings Chapel development is located to the west, and the Hardeman Springs development is located to the south. The site contains a number of natural resources, including moderate and very steep slopes, wetlands, and areas of woodlands. Approximately 10% of the site is covered in tree canopy. Within the proposed development, lots range in size between 5 acres and 6 acres in size. The overall density is 0.17 dwelling units per acre. 16% of the site will be preserved in open space, and approximately 90% of the existing tree canopy will be retained. A traffic access analysis was performed by the applicant and reviewed by the county's traffic consultant. No roadway improvements are required in conjunction with this development. Water service is provided by Nolensville College Grove Utility District, and wastewater is handled by individual septic systems. The Williamson County Department of Sewage Disposal Management has reviewed and approved the request. It should be noted that once detailed construction and engineering plans are prepared in conjunction with the submittal of a preliminary plat, changes to the layout, including the potential for a reduction of lots, may be necessary. A landscaping plan will also be required. Staff recommends approval of this concept plan with the following conditions. The preliminary plat must address the following. Number 1, submission of roads, drainage, and erosion control plans for review and approval by the county engineer. And number 2, submission of water plans for review and approval by Nolensville College Grove Utility District. The final plat must address the following. Number 1, prior to consideration of final plat approval, the applicant shall submit HOA documents for review and approval by the county attorney's office. The approved HOA documents must be recorded concurrently with the recording of the final plat. Number 2, establishment of a performance bond for roads, drainage, and erosion control. Number 3, establishment of a performance bond for water improvements in favor of Nolensville College Grove Utility District. Number 4, submission of landscaping plans and establishment of a performance bond for landscaping improvements. Number 5, execution of performance agreements for the above referenced sureties. Number 6, execution of a stormwater maintenance agreement and submission of an operation and maintenance plan for stormwater improvements. And number 7, submission of the approved final plat in DWG format on recordable media based on the Tennessee State Plan Coordinate System prior to signature and recording of the plat.
Any questions? Do I have a motion on item 26? We have a motion and a second. Vote. Let's vote, please. Motion passes. Moving on to item 27, concept plan review for Hyde Park Estates subdivision containing 16 lots on 108.29 acres located off Hyde Road in the 2nd voting district. Staff?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At this time, the applicant is requesting deferral to the June 2023 Planning Commission meeting to allow the applicant additional time to address staff's comments. Staff concurs with this request.
Thank you, sir. Any questions or motion? Have a motion? Have a second? Let's vote, please. Motion passes. Moving on to item 28, concept plan review revised for Arrington Woods subdivision containing 11 lots on 89.48 acres located off Nolensville Road in the 5th voting district. Staff?
Thank you. A concept plan for this development was approved at the January 2023 meeting. The applicant is now requesting approval of a revised concept plan in order to add 2 lots and make a minor adjustment to the configuration of a roadway. The subject property totals approximately 89 acres and is located off Nolensville Road, approximately a half-mile north of its intersection with Spantown Road. Surrounding properties range in size from several acres to more than 100 acres and are used for residential or agricultural purposes. The site contains a number of natural resources, including moderate and very steep slopes, karst features, streams, and large areas of woodlands. Approximately 90% of the site is covered in tree canopy. In addition to natural resources, the site contains a large portion of the Triune fortifications, which are important Civil War era that are listed on the Secretary of the Interior's National Register of Historic Places. Staff worked with the applicant as well as the Franklin Battlefield Trust to ensure the protection of these significant historic features. Upon plat recordation, these areas, which will be located within open space, will be transferred to the Battlefield Trust, who will own and maintain these historic features and place them within a permanent conservation easement. Within the development, lots range from approximately 5 acres to approximately 9 acres in size. The overall density is 0.12 dwelling units per acre. 20% of the site will be preserved in open space, and approximately 70% of the existing tree canopy will be retained. Access to the proposed development will be provided from a single entrance on Nolensville Road, which is classified as an arterial roadway by the Major Thoroughfare Plan. Internal roadways will be privately maintained. The roadway accessing lots 7 through 11 will traverse existing openings in the Triune fortifications. In order to minimize disturbance of these historic features, the applicant is requesting a reduced roadway section to include 2 8-foot lanes in these areas. Because this reduced section will help preserve the historic features, combined with the low number of lots to be served and the fact that the roads will be privately maintained, staff supports the request. Water service is provided by Nolensville College Grove Utility District, and wastewater is handled via individual septic systems. The Williamson County Department of Sewage Disposal Management has reviewed and approved the request. It should be noted that once detailed construction and engineering plans are prepared in conjunction with the submittal of a preliminary plat, changes to the layout, including the potential for a reduction of lots, may be necessary. A landscaping plan will be required. Staff recommends approval of this concept plan with the following conditions. The preliminary plat must address the following. 1, submission of roads, drainage, and erosion control plans for review and approval by the county engineer. And 2, submission of water plans for review and approval by Nolensville College Grove Utility District. The final plat must address the following. 1, prior to consideration of final plat approval, the applicant shall submit HOA documents for review and approval by the county attorney's office. Such documents shall include provisions related to the protection of the triune fortifications on the property. The approved HOA documents must be recorded concurrently with the recording of the final plat. 2, in conjunction with final plat recordation, upon open space areas containing the triune fortifications shall be transferred to the Franklin Battlefield Trust, who will place these areas into a permanent conservation easement. 3, establishment of a performance bond for roads, drainage, and erosion control. 4, establishment of performance bond for water improvements in favor of Nolensville College Grove Utility District. 5, submission of landscaping plans and establishment of a performance bond for landscaping improvements. 6, execution of performance agreements for the above referenced sureties. 7, execution of a stormwater maintenance agreement and submission of an operation and maintenance plan for stormwater improvements. And 8, submission of the approved final plat in DWG format on recordable media based on the Tennessee State Plan Coordinate System prior to signature and recording of the plat.
Mike, are there any questions on item number 28? Do we? No. Any, do I have a motion? Thank you. Have a motion, have a second. Let's vote, please. Motion passes. Moving on to preliminary plats, item 29. Preliminary plat review for Hawks View Large Lot Easement Subdivision containing 5 lots on 34.65 acres located off of Goose Creek Bypass in the 11th voting district. Staff?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The subject parcel is approximately 35 acres in size and is located off Goose Creek Bypass, approximately 1/2 mile north of Macklemore Road. The applicant is requesting approval of a large lot easement subdivision in order to create 5 lots off a new 50-foot ingress-egress utilities easement. The site contains natural resources requiring protection, including steep slopes, a hilltop, karst features, wetlands, and tree canopy. All zoning ordinance requirements, including those regarding the protection of natural resources, have been met. The applicant is proposing individual septic systems for the lots, and the Williamson County Department of Sewage Disposal Management has approved the request. Water will be provided by HB and TS Utility District. As no fire hydrants are proposed, building envelopes have been separated by 200 feet, and the fire apparatus access requirements in Section 3.05 in the subdivision regulations must be met. The preliminary plat is in order, and staff recommends approval subject to the following conditions, which must be addressed in conjunction with final plat submittal. Number 1, a notice of coverage issued by TDEC will be required prior to the issuance of a land disturbance permit. Number 2, prior to submittal of the final plat, provide a letter from the water provider either stating the water lines are installed and functioning or listing a performance bond amount for water improvements. Number 3, a land disturbance permit must be obtained for the overall development. Number 4, prior to submittal of the final plat, driveway and drainage infrastructure must be complete, consistent with zoning ordinance requirements. And number 5, satisfaction of Section 3.05 of the subdivision regulations as it pertains to fire apparatus access requirements.
Any questions on item number 29? Do we have a motion? We have a motion and we have a second. Let's vote, please. Motion passes. Thank you. Moving on to final plats, item 30, final plat review for Reed's Vale, Section 1, containing 60 lots on 98.431 acres located off Lampkins Bridge Road in the 5th Voting District. Staff?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant is requesting final plat approval of the first section of the development, which contains 60 lots, approximately 40 acres of open space, and the wastewater treatment and disposal areas. The plat remains consistent in layout with that depicted on the preliminary plat. Staff recommends approval of the final plat with the following conditions. The approved HOA documents must be recorded concurrently with the recording of the final plat. 2, establishment of performance bonds for roads, drainage, and erosion control in the amount of $2,781,000. 3, establishment of performance bond for water improvements in favor of Millcrofton Utility District in the amount of $614,410. Number 4, establishment of a maintenance bond for water improvements in favor of Millcrofton Utility District in the amount of $92,161.50. Per the recommendation of the county's consultant, establishment of a performance bond in the amount of $322,000 for the wastewater collection system. Number 6, establishment of a performance bond for landscaping in the amount of $60,687. And number 7, execution of a stormwater maintenance agreement and submission of operation and maintenance plan for stormwater improvements. And number 8, submission of the approved final plat in DWG format and recordable media based on the Tennessee State Plan Coordinate System prior to the signature and recording of the plat.
Do we have any questions for item number 30? Hearing none, do we have a motion? We have a motion and a second. Let's vote, please. Motion passes. Moving on to other business. Resolution to adopt the 2021 edition of the International Building Code, the 2021 International Residential Code excluding Section B 313.2, 1 and 2 dwelling automatic fire sprinkler systems pursuant to Tennessee Code 68-120-101A8 and Chapters 34 through 43 relating to electrical. The 2021 International Plumbing Code and the 2021 International Mechanical Code, as well as adoption of the 2021 International Energy Code with the 2009 tables in accordance with Rule 780-02-23-.02 as adopted by the Tennessee State Fire Marshal's Office 6-2023-604. Staff.
That part's the item number. Any rate, since 2018, Williamson County has operated in the 2015 edition of the International Building Code and the several attachments listed above. Tennessee Code Annotated requires that local government adopt an edition of the building code that is within 6 years of the most current edition, hence the reason for this request. In addition to matching the TCA mandate, this has the practical outcomes of the utilization of codes consistently statewide, as well as introducing new materials and technologies to the building code. It is recommended that the adoption of the 2021 International Building Code and several attachments be recommended to the Board of County Commissioners for adoption. And in case there are any questions, since I'm at the very edge of my knowledge of building codes, I've asked Mark McMillan to answer any questions y'all might have.
Thank you. Any questions on item number 31? You good? All right, that's easy. So,
I'm here.
do we have any, so no questions, so do I have a motion? We have a motion and a second. Let's vote, please. Thank you. Motion passes. Moving on to item 32, Mike's going to give us a regional growth planning update.
Debbie. Okay, so yeah, it's been a little while since we've talked about this, but you'll remember that we've been working with each of the 6 municipalities over the past year or so on some regional growth planning related topics. That's gone very, very well. Anytime you can get 7 different jurisdictions, marching in the same direction, you've accomplished something, and that's what's been taking place. And so we feel like it's gone so well that we're actually going to transition from that informal process that we've been undergoing to formally pursue an amendment to the overall Williamson County growth plan. So just as a refresher, you know this, but the growth plan is that system of urban growth boundaries, planned growth areas in the unincorporated county, and rural areas, which are really everything else. This is a system that was mandated by the state, and the current Williamson County growth plan was adopted in 2000 or 2001, so it's been in place for quite some time. This is the actual map that was adopted. This is the official Williamson County growth plan. You can see the different municipalities in their various shades of color, and then surrounding that is a darker shade of the same color that represents the urban growth boundaries. Those boundaries have not changed in 20 years. Obviously, the corporate limits have changed, and I'll show you a map that reflects the updates there. It's a little hard to see on this map, but the planned growth areas that the county is responsible for are out in Triune. You might be able to see a TCA 5, and then there are 3 up in the northern part in Grassland, and I'll show you that more clearly in a little bit. So you'll remember that when we adopted the comprehensive plan just a few years ago, there were 2 key ideas. There were lots of recommendations, but 2 sort of overarching themes. One was to reduce the allowable densities in the rural areas, right? And this is the land use map from the comp plan. That's been done. The county commission implemented that in, I think it was November of 2020. The other key recommendation was for the county to engage in collaborative regional growth management planning with the municipalities so that that overall system of urban growth boundaries, PGAs, and rural areas can work better and more efficiently. So that's what we've been doing over the past year or so, where each jurisdiction has been looking at where growth should occur based upon the normal things: population projections, available land, constraints to development, infrastructure, and so forth. And this has been an informal process. We've been working with an advisory group that has representation from each of the municipalities, as well as some other stakeholders. There's been a planners group that consists of me and my counterparts with the cities, a group of technical advisors, and then you all probably remember Greg Dale from the comp plan. He's been acting as a facilitator for this process. So as a result of all that analysis, each of the 7 jurisdictions feel like that some changes need to be made with respect to their growth patterns, and so a decision was made to pursue that by amending the overall growth plan. And that process was formally initiated about a week or so ago by Mayor Anderson when he sent a letter to the other mayors initiating that process. Okay, I'm going to show you a few maps real quick. This is an updated version of that first map I showed you, where you've got the 6 municipalities in various shades of color. This is the corporate limits as it was when this map was prepared a short time ago, but the growth boundaries are the same as they were back in 2020, 2000, 2001. I think it probably shows up as kind of a peach color out in Triune and then up in Grassland. Those are the PGAs. According to the current growth plan, those are the planned growth areas in the county. Obviously, our land use policies are driven by the comp plan, which you all adopted a short time ago, that are no longer consistent with this 2000 growth plan. And so This map shows you in yellow the proposed planned growth areas, which are the 4 villages that you all have adopted special area plans for: Leapers Fork, Grassland, Triune, College Grove, as well as a couple of what we refer to currently as hamlets, Rutterville and Arrington. And those are included because the comp plan recommends that those be converted to villages following a special area plan process. So you can see that from the county standpoint, in terms of what we're proposing, those planned growth areas are significantly scaled back. And again, that's a direct reflection of the land use policies that the county adopted. So again, this is current. This is a map that kind of shows a composite of the different jurisdictions' work at this stage anyway. And so you can see, as I toggle back and forth, there are some differences in each of the jurisdictions in terms of what those urban growth boundaries would be. You know, I won't belabor the point, and you can see these in more detail. We'd be happy to email it to you. But let me move on if I could. So we feel like that the growth plan this time needs to be more than just a map. And so we feel like it also needs to contain some goals and strategies that help that system work better. And so the map will be accompanied by some policies and some goals as well. I won't go through these, but you can see, I'll mention a couple of key ones. One is that we need to deal with how we are treating land that is in the growth boundary before it's annexed. And so we need to be working on some policies for that. The bullet under that, I think, is an important one too for county people, which is that, hey, if we're going through this trouble of updating the growth boundaries, there should be no need for the cities to annex outside of those boundaries. And the cities have been receptive to that. We're actually working on some interlocal agreements that would formalize that would be done in conjunction with the plan. We feel like that the plan does not need to be static again for 20 years. It needs to be revisited at least every 5 years, and that after the growth plan is adopted, there should be some sort of a group that continues to meet to help implement the ideas. So that's a quick overview of what those might look like. There has to be a coordinating committee that is established, and this is the statutorily prescribed makeup of that committee. So each jurisdiction would have their mayor or an appointee. Mayor Anderson is going to do it for us. There are some other groups like the school board and the chamber, for instance, that are going to be on here as well. And so those appointments are being made currently. So real quickly, as I close, I want to give you an idea of what the process will be like and what the timetable is that we're shooting for. As I said, right now that coordinating committee is being formalized, and then the first meeting of that coordinating committee has been scheduled for mid-June. Following that, each of the 7 jurisdictions is required to hold 2 public hearings, and so we envision one of those public hearings taking place at a planning commission meeting. It just makes sense, I think, that we handle it that way. So we're thinking that would take place at your July planning commission meeting. And then there'll be another one that we do as well, probably in this room, and we'll make sure that the county commission is involved in that one too. Then following that, the coordinating committee would hear the official presentations from the cities based upon whatever information they glean from their public hearings. Then the coordinating committee would prepare a draft growth plan, and then they will hold 2 public hearings themselves to get feedback on that. Once those public hearings are held, they'll make whatever refinements need to be made to the growth plan, and then then the coordinating committee would officially transmit the proposed growth plan to the county. And to the county as well as to the 6 municipalities. And each of those jurisdictions would have to approve that proposed growth plan at the legislative level. So our county commission will need to approve that. And then once they do, and once the municipalities have approved it at their legislative level, the growth plan gets sent to the state. There's a committee, a state committee that is charged with formally, I guess, accepting or ratifying those growth plans. So that's a quick overview of what we'll be doing. It's an important project, and we'll keep you updated and hope that you are involved as we go forward. That's it.
Mike? Do you want to take any questions? If
If you have any, I'd be happy to.
anybody have any questions, or Jessica?
So maybe we've already disconnected, but on the coordinating committee members?
Yes.
You went through that pretty quickly.
Good.
Is there anyone from the planning commission that's on there?
So so I mentioned that each mayor is either going to serve or they can appoint a designee. Mayor Anderson is going to serve from the county. So in addition to that, there are a couple of entities, the county being one, where they get some additional appointments. So the county mayor will also make 2 appointments to the committee, and the city with the largest population, which is Franklin, they will also make 2 additional appointments. So that'll be Mayor Anderson's appointees.
Outside of the public hearings, will there be like community engagement, or how does the community get updated on what's happening?
It'll be primarily through the public hearings. Now we have a website that we've been maintaining, giving people information on the informal process that we've been undergoing, and we'll update that, and we'll find different ways to notice those public hearings, and that we hope will be effective. Now remember, the county's part, it's pretty easy for us because our land use policies are new, and so that drives what we're proposing from the county standpoint. Our public hearings are going to be focused primarily on what the county is proposing, and then each of those jurisdictions will hold their own public hearings on what they're proposing, and so hopefully they'll do a good job too of getting the word out.
Anybody else? Keith?
Hey, Mike, on the, I don't know if it's some ad hoc committee or whatever that's been putting this together so far. When y'all send out the PDF on this, you're going to send that out, right?
I'd be happy to. Yeah, I'll send you a copy of this PowerPoint
On what you just
presentation.
showed us?
Sure.
That's good.
Yeah.
Could you include, like, who was involved in all that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so, and I'll just verbalize that real quickly, but I'll do that. So we've been working with an advisory committee on an informal basis, but we've included a lot of the same people that will probably continue on with the next step. So the mayors have been very involved, managers have. We wanted to make sure that the chamber and the schools and the different entities that will have to be involved were involved informally, so that they'll have a working knowledge coming into this process, because there's a limited amount of time based on how the state statute reads from the time that we start this process to when we finish it.
Follow up on that is, and this might be to your question a little bit, is obviously there's some of the areas that we are over, I guess you'd say, that would be impacted by this, maybe a little bit more than in past. I mean, I live up in Grassland. I mean, that was on there. It'd be real good to know sort of what that impact's going to be.
Oh, of course.
As time goes on here.
Yeah, yeah, no, that absolutely, and there'll be lots of ways that people, not only planning commission members, but the public can become informed on not only what is proposed, but what the implications of that are. In the case of Grassland, what we're proposing is going to exactly mirror what our zoning is now, because that was based on the Grassland Special Area Plan and the Comprehensive Plan. So there really won't be any changes from the county standpoint in the Grassland area. From what you see now based on the zoning is what I'm talking about.
Okay, thank you.
Then so can we assume that's planned growth areas, Triune and College Grove, et cetera?
Yeah, so Triune, the proposed planned growth area matches the boundaries of the Triune districts that, except for the one that's 1 to 5, because that wouldn't make it a planned growth area. But everything else, the boundaries exactly coincide with the zoning based on the plans. Yeah.
Mike, now, is the final UGB map available on the web right now? Because I know in the past that some of those lines have been changed and added to and taken away, so.
So the growth plan map that I showed you at first, the one that was adopted in 2000 or 2001, has not been changed at all. It's exactly the same. So it will change as a result of this process, to match, what each jurisdiction feels like their actual growth patterns are going to be.
Well, I know Thompson Station had taken in some actually around my property at one time, and then I went and spoke to them, and then they'd said they were not going to, so sometimes you have to stay on top of things before you find out what really happened.
Yeah, and a couple of the jurisdictions have been, at least occasionally, annexing outside of their growth boundaries. And that's probably what you're talking about, and that results in a lot of confusion, and I don't think that's a good practice.
Well, this wasn't annexing, it was just they was expanding their UGB. It was on their proposed
I
map
see.
originally.
So what I think you're maybe referring to is that within the past year or so, as the different jurisdictions were studying what might change in the future, they had some public outreach about that. So that's probably what you're talking about. Yeah.
I just want to know if y'all have a finalized map.
I will. So no, the answer is no, because we have what I consider a starting point for this process. And that's the map that was contained in here, and I'll email that to you. But in terms of Thompson Station, if you want to know what I'm going to send you, you're not going to be able to tell property boundaries because it's at that scale. But Thompson Station could tell you exactly what they're proposing and where that proposed boundary is.
Question. So since we're talking about municipalities annexing outside the UGBs, I think that was one of the points in there was you said that would not continue under this new plan. So there would be something legislated that would prevent that from happening in the future?
So the idea is that there will be interlocal agreements signed by each of the jurisdictions agreeing not to annex outside the growth boundaries. Yes.
Once the new UGBs are established with this.
Exactly. That's probably more of a Christie question, but I know that the lawyers are about to meet to talk about exactly how to, introduce some enforceability into the agreement that's developed. Is that right? Yeah, Don.
How will the people who live in the growth areas, if the municipalities decide to make changes in the zoning or anything in that area, how will they be notified?
If the growth boundary changes, then they should learn about it through whatever public notice process the cities are doing in conjunction with this. Now, that's not the same thing as zoning. The city wouldn't change zoning until they annex, and so there would be no, obviously they would know and even be a party to annexation, which would be required prior to the city changing the zoning of a piece of property. Yeah.
Else, we Somebody move for adjournment? So move. Let's go home. Thank you. Thanks, Mike.